Tonkin and Taylor started with its feet firmly on the ground in geotechnical. While working as part of the biggest piece of major infrastructure in Auckland's short history, John Taylor began on one side of the Auckland Harbour Bridge while Ralph Tonkin started on the other. They met in the middle and Tonkin and Taylor was born.
They were a match made in heaven, really. Ralph was the sort of risk taker. Ralph always said yes, and Don said, oh shit, how are we going to do it? They were just so different, but worked together seamlessly.
I knew Don quite well. Don was, he was up in the front of the office and I was down the back in the laboratory. And he was a bit of a mystique, really, Don, but he certainly was a man of very high standards and he used to work really hard.
Collaborating seamlessly is part of the ethos of TNT, as is getting the best people together to do the best possible job. From the Maitai Dam to the Anawhenua Hydro Station and many more, we delivered outstanding project after project during the 70s, 80s and 90s.
The river is bridged at the head of the rapids and a barrage begun.
And alongside every groundbreaking project, people and culture were always at the forefront of TNT's growth.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really too sure what to expect, especially when the guy who picked me up from Whangarei took to take me out to Marsden Point to the site. Every time a car passed him, he'd say, "Brush past, Marty, hell ain't full yet." And so I thought, he was the lab manager and this is going to be an interesting start to my career.
I used to, on the mail rounds, I'd always have a laugh when I'd go into John Duda's office and he'd call me Bridgie and he'd say something along the lines of, "Bridgie, have you seen my glasses?" And I'd point to his head where they were invariably sitting.
Peter went on sabbatical and while he was away, Terry said to us, while he's away, you need to clean up his office. Every piece of paper needs to be filed. And when Peter got back, he was very unhappy and walked around like a bear with a sore head for quite some time, looking for bits of paper.
Things weren't always quite so relaxed though. In October of 1987, when the global financial markets crashed, Tonkin and Taylor and its leadership had to face one of the biggest tests in its history to date.
Auckland followed the other major world markets this morning. Investors bailed out, putting the chalkies in high gear and the market in free fall.
The 1987 share market crash impacted really heavily on Tonkin and Taylor, and it was probably a double whammy in that that event occurred just at the same time when the remaining founding partner was about to retire. So there was a transition imminent, and then the share market collapse happened.
When I started, staff numbers were under 100 still, and not being there during the time of the crash, but sort of seeing the aftermath, I was aware of how much personal risk people or the directors had taken on.
We got to a point where I think we were technically bankrupt. The company needed to survive, and so each of us took out extra loans, extra mortgages on our house, and for the only time in Tonkin and Taylor's history, people were laid off and redundancies occurred. Very tough times.
Through careful management and sound planning, staff numbers eventually returned to pre-crash figures in 1995. And with a sound business model that had resisted being bought out by an enormous multinational, Tonkin and Taylor grew steadily throughout the 90s and noughties.
We've got the right people in the right jobs. When they employ people who fit with the culture of the company and who fit in with the other staff that are already there. That shows, because if you can't work together, you would never have grown and developed the way we have.
It's just been such a family, a work family. So every day I get up and go to work, and it's not like I'm going to work, I'm going somewhere where I enjoy being. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to be there.
"60 years has passed since Don and Ralph met on Auckland's Harbour Bridge, and in those 60 years, we've worked on some of the most significant engineering projects around New Zealand and the Pacific. We've weathered difficult times and celebrated good times. We've been together standing for excellence and ambition. We are proud to say that we are Tonkin and Taylor."